Welcome to the Close Encounter Club. I'm your host, Justin Gearhart. In this episode, I sit down with Michael Clifford, a retired audio engineer who shares some of the most fascinating and thought-provoking experiences I've come across. Michael recounts an eerie past life connection that culminates in a life-changing moment at a DMV, of all places. It's a moment that raises profound questions about karma, forgiveness, and the unseen forces that may shape our lives. Michael also has a lifetime of vivid dreams, premonitions, and what he calls karmic connections that defy logical explanation. I can't stop thinking about how this story mirrors a previous episode, Milford Has Been Shot, Episode 2. Both involve moments of profound synchronicity, unexplained forces at work, and the ripple effect of past actions across lives. Have you guys ever heard of the Baader-Meinhof phenomena, where something you recently learned or experienced suddenly appears everywhere? Maybe that's what's happening with me with this episode, but you be the judge and let me know if you think I'm just going crazy. But anyway, Michael's story is one of intuition, reincarnation, and forgiveness. It'll challenge your understanding of how our lives, and maybe even our souls, are interconnected. I'm really excited for you to hear it, so let's just dive in. This is episode 6. The title is I Forgive You, and you're listening to the Close Encounter Club.
My name is Michael Clifford, and I'm 62 years old, recently retired. I used to be an audio engineer, and we used to do sound and live recordings and live audio for all kinds of different venues and different events, ranging from symphonies to rock and roll concerts to live sporting events and things like that. So, anything audio related that was live, I was involved in. But that's what I used to do all the time. I was just consumed by it. It was my passion, and I started out trying to play music, and I always ended up just trying to mix the band instead, because it was much more intuitive for me than trying to play an instrument. So that's how I fell into it. I can make it sound really good, but don't ask me to play anything.
Yeah, that's funny. So I guess we'll just dive right into it. You had a feeling when you were a teen that you were going to get married and have 2 daughters. Can you just maybe tell that story?
Well, yeah, it was just like an intuition that I had. I just always saw my future as being married and specifically having 2 daughters. And I don't really know where it came from. I can speculate that, my uncle had 2 daughters, and I was pretty close to them, as cousins, but I don't think it was related to that. It was just something that I knew was going to happen. I was just so sure of it that I was going to have 2 daughters. I was going to have a wife that was going to be blonde, and it was hard to rationalize because, it's not something that me and my friends would normally think about. I never shared it with any of them. It's just something that I just knew was going to happen at some point. And it never did.
So how old were you when you first kind of had that feeling?
When I was 18, right around after I graduated. It just seemed like a matter of fact that I would eventually meet somebody that was blonde, and I would have 2 daughters, and I would think about all the ways that I would raise them and what I would say to them, and how I would try not to repeat the mistakes that my parents were making, and all those types of things. Just making sure that I was going to have a safe environment for them to grow up in, and you could say it was like a fantasy, but it didn't seem that way. It just seemed like this is what's going to happen, and this is, this is going to be my life as soon as I find this girl, of course. But I never found that girl. I never found anyone close to that. You know, it was what happened later was everybody that I met that I might be interested in, either they weren't interested in me or they couldn't have children, or it was always something that came up. It was like something that kept steering me away from marriage. So it always felt weird. And as I got into like my 30s, I was like, wow, I guess maybe this isn't going to happen. I mean, I was actually more attracted to brunettes with blue eyes or green eyes or something like that. But yeah, this wasn't like a one-off thing. I mean, this persisted all through my 20s and into my 30s. I was just waiting, you know. But I did meet a blonde girl and I was dating her for a while, but it didn't work out. And that's about as close as it came. But yeah, it just never materialized. I did not grow up in a religious family at all. My parents would never talk about religion unless we brought it up. They would never initiate that conversation. And the closest thing I got to church was when I was a kid, like, I don't know, maybe 8 or 9 years old. My mom would get really tired. I had 2 older brothers, and she'd get really tired of keeping track of us in the summer. And so a neighbor down the street suggested, why don't you just send them to Bible school? Because that's what I do. I send them to Bible camp and get them out of my hair. And so that's what she did. So we ended up going to Bible camp for the summer, and it was just like a cult. You know, to me, it was just the classic cult where they would have you do arts and crafts. They would preach to you, and then they would go out and play volleyball for like 3 hours straight, and then come back in and preach to you again. And none of the stuff made sense to me. That it was, I would have questions. They'd get really mad when I'd ask questions because none of their teachings made any sense. It just seemed like it was all made up. So I do remember asking my mom about different religions because, you know, I had many friends at school were all different types of religions. So I would ask her, oh, you know, maybe we should find some kind of a church. And so we would go every once in a while. I go, oh, this looks like a nice church. And we'd go in there and sit on a Sunday. And then we'd get up and leave. And, this doesn't feel right. So religion was not on my radar at all through my teens. And it wasn't until after I turned, I don't know, like 19 or 20 years old, my best friend, who was actually a Christian Scientist, but he never talked about his religion at all with me, even though we were best friends. It just rarely came up. But we had gone through so many different bonding situations and things, and I started asking him about it, and he goes, okay, you know, if you ask, I'll talk to you all about it. So he told me all about Christian Science. I read some of Mary Baker Eddy's books, and that kind of made sense to me. And at least it made sense to where my friend was coming from. And so I never actually went to any Christian Science schools or churches or anything like that. I merely just read the book and just took some ideas from it and thought that was kind of cool. I kind of liked the way that she explains certain things. I never really got heavily involved in it at all. But I did try to do some of the self-healing techniques, and I had some success with it.
What kind of self-healing techniques?
Well, if you know Christian Science at all, a lot of it is rooted in the ability to heal yourself, because apparently that's what one of the things that Jesus actually said in the Bible was heal yourself. And so this lady, she went through great lengths to try and figure out how to do that, and she thought that she had figured it out. I don't believe she did, but she had some really good ideas on it. And so I tried some of those techniques to try and heal myself. I did have some interesting experiences doing that. And so that is what really awakened me to spirituality, is because I felt this connection when I would try these techniques. It was basically just, meditation and breathing and just using your mind to connect with a higher source. And so that is what really kind of opened the door for me. I started to have a series of vivid dreams, and some of them were like repeating dreams. I figured out that those dreams would keep repeating until I found the true meaning behind the dream. And once I figured out what the symbolism was in those dreams, then that would stop the dream from repeating over and over again. And then I started having a series of premonition type dreams. They started off really small. I could tell that they were a premonition dream, and it's kind of hard to explain why or how I knew it was a premonition, but it was giving you parameters. And I like to use the analogy of, like, if you're signing up for an auto payment in a bank, they're going to send you a series of small withdrawals and deposits, and then you have to write down the numbers and then send it back to them, and then they know they have the right account. That's what these dreams were like. They were just like, okay, we're going to give you these parameters, and then it's a proof of concept. You're going to see how big of a window you have to make this dream come true, and you can manipulate it. You can not do anything, and the dream won't come true, or you could do what you saw in the dream, and this will come true. And so I did that, and I realized, wow, I'm actually having premonition dreams. This is kind of cool. I had this incredible premonition dream where I was shown a slot machine. And the slot machine, I was playing it, and I pulled the handle, and I won $4,000 in the slot machine. And it was just super vivid. Like, wow, babe, let's go to Reno. Because after the dream, I knew that I had 3 weeks to go to Reno to make this dream come true. And we love to go to Reno. So we said, okay, let's just go to Reno. So we made arrangements, went there, and I'm looking all over for this machine because it was very specific in the dream. And I'd never seen it before, and I couldn't find it where we were. And she had a son that lived there, and the son called us up and said, hey, I want to go bowling. It's like, I don't want to go bowling. I want to go look for this machine. It's like, come on, let's go bowling. So, all right. So we go bowling, and it's at the MGM or whatever. It is, that big bowling center that they have. And of course, you have to walk through a casino to get to it. And as we're walking through the casino, I see this machine. And it's exactly the machine in the dream. And it's in this whole bank of Chinese astrology machines. And there it is. It's my birth year, 1962, year of the tiger. Every single detail on this machine is exactly like the machine I saw. And I'm shaking. I'm like, oh my God, this is so weird. Just seeing the machine is premonition enough, right? And so I take out $100 bill. I put it in the machine just like I did in the dream. And I cash it all out. So I have all the coins on the bottom. And I start putting in the coins, max bet, and I'm just shaking. I'm like, I can't do this. And I pull it, and I just get that feeling it's gonna win, but this is too weird. So I call my wife over. I say, you play this machine. You put in max bet, put the coins in, and play it. I guarantee you're gonna win. She's like, well, I don't like playing dollars. No, just play it. And so I couldn't watch. I left. And I go back over to this other machine, and all of a sudden I hear her screaming from across the casino. And her son comes over and goes, you don't believe it. My mom just won. I go, I know, she won. She won $4,000, huh? He goes, how did you know? And I walk back over there just as the guy's counting out $4,000 to her. I was like, oh my God, it actually came through. So after that is when I had this other dream of the murder. It was the same type of vivid dream, so it obviously caught my attention. All the cues were correct, except this was in the past, and it was black and white. I had my two daughters with me, which I believe they were twins in this dream. It was in like the late 40s, and we were in like one of those coffee diners, where they sell candy to the kids and everything, like a five and dime store or whatever. And I was giving the girls some candy. I was paying for some candy up front for them, and this guy walks into the store with a gun and says, "This is a holdup." Oh man. And so I'm trying to stand between him and my daughters, and he said, "You got to give me your wallet." It's like, oh, okay. So I was wearing this overcoat, and I reached in the overcoat to get the wallet out, and I dropped the wallet. And so I reached down really quick to pick it up because I didn't want to make the guy wait. But I guess when I went down really quick to pick the wallet up, he shoots the gun, and it hits me right in the head. And I fall backwards, and I could just feel the warm blood just covering my face, and I can feel my life just draining out of me. And my daughters were there, they're, screaming. And the guy standing over me is like, "Oh, I'm so sorry," and he's all shaken. "I didn't mean to. I didn't want to shoot you." And I just looked at him and I said, "It's okay. I forgive you." And I pass away in the dream. And then I wake up, and I was like, up until that point, I was always of the wives' tale that if you die in your dream, then you die for real. So I was a little freaked out about it. Well, I guess I'm still alive, so I guess that's not true. So what happened? What is this? And that's when I decided, or it came to the conclusion that it was a past life dream.
Was your wife in the dream with the blonde hair, or was it just your children?
No, it was just my children. My wife was not in the dream, but in the dream, it was so vivid that I had the sense that I was married to a blonde girl, and these were my kids, and it was my whole life. I mean, I don't know what it was. I was like my occupation, but I could tell I was pretty well off. I wasn't like super rich, but I was comfortable, and it seemed like it was in the Midwest, like maybe St. Louis area or something like that. I mean, it was very specific, all these clues that were in this dream. I don't try to lucid dream. I guess I have, like, oh man, I really would kind of like to have a flying dream, and maybe sometimes I will fly in a dream. But I learned how to lucid dream a long time ago, actually, because I used to have nightmares when I was a kid. And I used to get so tired of running from these monsters every night. And I finally figured out I could just turn around and confront them. And I would turn around and I would start being a smartass. I would make them laugh, or make them ashamed or whatever. And they stopped chasing me because they weren't getting the... But I would just confront them. I would say, "What are you going to do? Kill me? You can't kill me in my dream. Nothing can happen. What is your goal here?" And so they stopped chasing me. So I hadn't had nightmares actually until recently. I started thinking about it, like, well, I mean, if it really was a past life experience, I mean, somebody getting murdered in front of their kids in a store would be in the newspapers. There'd be some kind of an account of it. And I mean, I'm not Doris Kearns Goodwin or Ken Burns. I can't do all the research that they can do, but I at least knew how to get into archives of old newspapers and enter search terms and try and figure out if something like this happened in the time period that I thought that this was taking place. And I looked as hard as I could for about a week or so. And and my brother also was helping me trying to figure out if that had ever happened before, because he was really intrigued by it too. But I couldn't come up with anything. I mean, the closest I could come up with was somebody in the St. Louis area that was shot in a diner, like a breakfast diner, but he was alone, and that was pretty much it. And he was shot by some robbers. And then there was another case where this guy was shot by in some nightclub or something like that. It was kind of similar, but still nothing that was a real close match.
Could you do you know what decade do you think approximately this was in?
This seemed like it was post World War II, based on the clothing that was being worn and the style of the buildings that I was in. That's what it seemed like. Seemed like it was in the late 40s, maybe early 50s.
I'm gonna do some digging myself, if you don't mind, and see if I can locate anything, because that seems like an opportunity. Possibly, if I can research it and maybe find something, would be crazy in a good way.
Yeah, that would be pretty wild. But yeah, I would think that something like that would, they would have reported on it because it's pretty traumatic.
Yeah.
And so after that, I started to think, well, perhaps it was just symbolic, like this was the life that you were going to have, and now it's not. So that part of you is dead. And so now you can go on with this new phase of your life. I mean, you could look at it in that kind of vein too, like it was a symbolic dream and not a literal past life dream. But there was just too much involved in it, and then later on, when that incident happened at the DMV, which we'll get into, that kind of solidified it for me that this actually happened.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be back with the rest of the story.
I was in the market for a truck, and my wife, which is different than the wife I had during the dream. This is my second wife. She likes to take control of all that stuff. So I am totally adverse to Craigslist. I hate it. I don't like to deal with it all. But she loves it. So she insisted on buying this truck from Craigslist. So I said, well, you just do whatever you have to do. I'm not going to be involved in it. And I'm just going to take a back seat to that. And so she was living at a different house. Actually, we weren't married at the time. We were just boyfriend and girlfriend, and she was living at her house, and I was living at my house. And I had my best friend over. He'd from out of town, and he was staying with me. And that morning, we're going to wake up and have breakfast, and then I was going to drive him to the train station. And just as we were getting ready to go, my girlfriend calls me and says, hey, we have to go. You have to be at the bank to buy this truck that I got. I'm like, oh, man, I don't want to do that, because it was just something that just came up out of nowhere. And so I had to go deal with this truck. So I left my friend at home and went over to the bank where this guy was, and he was there selling his dad's truck. His dad was there, and his wife was there, and then I was there with my girlfriend, and my girlfriend had to take the guy in to go exchange the money for this truck. And I was under the impression that all the paperwork was in order. And my girlfriend was as well. But as he came out, he says, "Oh yeah, one small thing, I don't have the pink slip." It's like, oh man. And he goes, "Yeah, so but it's super easy. It's all you have to do is just take this note to the DMV, hand it to the person. You don't have to stand in line. You hand it to the clerk there, and they'll give you a new pink slip." And I said, "That's not how it works. I'm going to be sitting in the DMV all day." And oh no. So I go, "Okay, I'll tell you what. I'm going to take your father and your wife. You go off to work, whatever you have to do, and I'm going to take them and hold them hostage while I'm at the DMV, so they can see that you're full of crap. This is a process." So he goes, "All right." So I take his dad in his car or the truck, right? And we drive to the DMV. His wife follows us over there. The parking lot's packed, so I have to park at the very end of the street. And we walk all the way over there. And sure enough, I get in the door, hand them the paper, and they say, "Great, here's your ticket, and you're going to wait in line." And the ticket was like G107 or something like that. All right. I mean, just god awful number. And the next number they're calling is, B7 or something like that. And I'm like, oh man, see, I'm going to be waiting all day. And so they got the point. Like, all right, we're sorry, but can we go now? And so I thought, all right, you guys can go. And then I'm going to go to Starbucks because I've got plenty of time now. I'm still hungry because I missed my breakfast and everything. And I'm just going to get a Starbucks and a pastry or something while I'm waiting for this line. So I text my friend that I'm going to be late, and then they start to go, and I'm just going to get up and I'm going to go to Starbucks. And at that moment, this voice in my head says, "Nah, wait, you're not going yet." And I'm like, who are you? Who is this voice? Because, you have your own internal dialogue, right? You know what that sounds like. And this was different. This was just a really authoritative voice saying, "No, just wait." It was similar to my own internal voice, but it was just much more confident and commanding. It's like, "No." And I'm kind of arguing with it. I was like, why not? Just wait. All right. And so I'm trying to figure out why this thing wants me to wait. I go, well, do you want me to wait because you want that old man and his daughter-in-law to leave first? And it wouldn't say. So I'm thinking, maybe that's it. So I kind of get up and I'm starting to walk and look over to where they're walking towards. I guess they're going towards their car. And the voice is like, "Don't go." "Oh, no, I'm not. I'm just going to look." And so I watch them, and they get in their car, and they start to drive away. And I go, "Okay, I'm going to go now." "Nope, go back and sit down." It's like, wow, this is really weird. So I go back and I sit down, and I'm like, what am I waiting for? And it won't say. It was just sitting there waiting. And so I'm waiting and waiting. I'm like, man, I'm getting really hungry, and I got to get my Starbucks. And then, but it's just going to just hold on. And so I'm sitting there waiting, and then all of a sudden it says, "Okay, now go. Get up and go." "Really?" He goes, "Go." Okay, so I got up and I just start walking out the door, and I'm walking down the street towards the intersection, and the voice says, "Okay, take your files and put them in the front seat of your car." "Oh, all right. I guess that's a good idea." And so I put them in my car, which is right at the intersection of this long street. And I lock the door, and I go across the street to the strip mall where the Starbucks is. And it's like halfway down there in the middle of the strip mall. And I get in there and I order my drink, and I order my banana bread or whatever it was. And I'm eating, and I'm thinking, I wonder how long I have before my number is going to be called. But I have full confidence that this entity or whatever it is, this thing that's inside my head, is going to take care of that. So I thought, oh, he's going to take care of it. And then all of a sudden it says, okay, time to go, get up. All right. And so I finish my drink, finish my bread. And it's like, no, go. So, and I hurry up and I get out and I start walking and I'm thinking, oh man, maybe I'm going to miss my number being called. So I start walking really fast. And just at that point, this guy comes walking out of this other store and cuts me off, walks right in front of me. And he's walking a little bit slower. And in my mind, I'm thinking, well, I'll just pass him up. And the thing in my head saying, no, just follow this guy. Just follow at his pace. Okay. And so I'm walking behind this guy and I'm thinking, he's just going to go and get in this car in the parking lot and I'll be able to walk a little bit faster. But he doesn't. He keeps walking. He's walking. He turns around the corner. There's like no cars parked in this lot anymore. And I'm like, what is going on here? I just can't figure this out. Why do I have to walk so slow? And then there's one car in the very end, and that happens to be his car. And it's just in line where I'm trying to go. It's like, this is just too weird. So he gets in his car, and I'm walking, and I'm approaching the intersection, and I start to hear another voice. But this one is outside of my head. And this one is like, it's somebody maybe 20 feet away at the most. And they're having a conversation, but I can't see anybody around me. There's nobody walking around me. And it's like they're having a conversation, a one-sided conversation, but I can't really pick out the words that they're saying, but I could hear it. And I can't localize the sound, which, as a sound guy, I'm pretty good at that, but I can't figure out where the sound is coming from, but it's not from my head. And then as I'm walking towards my car, I see this car make a U-turn and parks right behind my truck. And that's when I remember, I got to go get my files out of the front seat. I almost forgot. And so I go over there, and as I'm getting my files out, this guy has parked his car, and he gets out of the car, and he's talking as he gets out of the car. And his voice is the exact voice that I've been hearing as I'm trying to cross this intersection. And he's talking to me. This whole time, he's been talking to me, and he's addressing me directly as he's getting out of the car, like he's just continuing this conversation with me before we haven't even met. I've never seen this guy before. And it's like, what the heck? And he just comes right up next to me and he keeps on talking. And it's just small talk. It's just like nonsense. And I'm like, this is so weird. I'm thinking, man, I'm just going to walk away from this guy. And then the voice inside my head is telling me, no, just be nice to this guy and just walk with him. Okay. And so I just walk with the guy all the way up to the DMV, and we get in, and he goes to the left and I go to the right, and I get right up to where the chairs are, where you're waiting in line again. And they call my number immediately. Like, oh man, that was good timing. But I expected it at this point. Like, this is such a weird day all of a sudden. So I get in there.
Okay, can I interrupt for a second? When the guy came out of the car and you said he continued the conversation.
Yeah.
What was he saying to you?
Just nonsense. He was saying, like, oh, I saw that you were walking to the Starbucks, and I thought that was a good idea because I have to wait. And so I left some papers at my home, and I had to go back and get them. It was just small talk. But it was just so, because he obviously saw me before, but I had no idea who this guy was. But I learned that he worked at a car dealership, so he's at the DMV a lot, apparently.
So he came out. He was just kind of like small talk with you. You noticed it was the same voice that was in your head, And then you walked into the DMV, I think you said next, right?
It wasn't the voice that was in my head. It was a voice that I heard outside my head, but
Oh,
I couldn't have heard it because he was inside of a car. But what was so strange was that as he's getting out of the car, is when I synced up the voice that I was hearing outside of my head with his voice.
I see.
So somehow he was carrying on this conversation with me even before he got out of the car, even before I was within 50 yards of him.
Got it. Okay.
It was just weird. I can't figure out how that happens. But anyway, so as I'm getting the paperwork, I have completely forgot about this guy. And I'm walking out, and then I remember, oh, wow, that's right. There was that weird guy. I wonder if I'm getting out before him or after him. And I was kind of like, I don't want to see him again. I just want to slip out. And so I get outside, and he's already standing out in front, and he's on his phone. And I'm like, okay, good. At least he's on his phone. Maybe I can just sneak by him. But as I get in front of him, he goes, I got to go. And he puts his phone down and he walks right up to me again and just starts talking again, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, wow, this is really weird. And he's just going on about how he works at the Toyota dealership and whatever. And so I know that I have to walk with this guy all the way to my car because I know he's parked right behind me. And we get a little bit past halfway to his car, and his tone just changes. And he says, do you know why I have that license plate on my car? And I'm like, license plate? I can't even see your license plate. He goes, that right there, look at it. And I'm looking at it, and it's just some numbers. And he goes, that's a date. And I have this special date, and it was like a Valentine's Day, and I don't remember the year, but it was a Valentine's Day. And he says, I will never forget that day. And he starts telling me what happened to him that day. And the story that he tells me is that he was drove to San Francisco with his wife and his two daughters. And he was on his way to a Valentine's night dinner, had made reservations and everything. He parked his car on the street, and he's walking to this restaurant when this guy comes out of nowhere with a gun and says, give me your money. And he says, I'm just trying to have dinner with my family here. And the guy shoots him right in the chest, right in front of his wife and his two kids. And he's bleeding, and he's crushed, right? But he starts to try and chase this guy. And he falls down and he passes out, and he wakes up in the hospital. And the doctor says, you are so lucky. I don't know how you survived this. Well, actually, I do know how you survived this. And he gives him his shirt, and his shirt has a breast pocket in it, and he pulls out a wad of $100 bills in it with a bullet hole. And he says, if this wasn't in your pocket, this bullet would have went right through your heart. And he goes, I never keep money in my breast pocket. I never keep a lot of cash with me. I've never had that much money on me in my life. I have no idea how it got there. And as he's telling me the story, that other voice in my head is telling me, it's like narrating it, like this is because of what happened in your dream. Connecting the dots, this is the guy that shot me back in the 40s. And somehow, because I forgave him, that he was spared having to have the exact same thing happen to him in this life. And that's how it was explained to me as he's telling me the story. This other voice that was telling me to stop and go and do this and do that at all these different times is narrating why this is happening to me. And I was just dumbstruck. And he's like, why are people like this? And I go, I'm trying to tell them, everybody's connected, and I don't know why people would do, because they're really just doing this to themselves. If they try to hurt you, they're just hurting themselves, and people have to learn, blah blah blah. And I'm trying to just give him some words of encouragement, and he's sobbing, he's just crying his eyes out, and we just give each other this big hug, and he goes off in his way and I go on mine.
So you're saying, just to clarify, that you think that the person at the DMV that you were talking to in a past life was the person in that candy shop that shot you and killed you?
Yes.
And now, present day, you guys are basically reconnecting. And since whatever year it was that he was shot and the wad of $100 bills saved his life, he understood what he did to you in a past life, and you think that he reconnected with you to have that moment in the DMV. Is that correct?
I do not know, and I'm pretty sure that he doesn't know, or he didn't know, that he shot me in a past life.
Okay.
I don't think he had that information. But I do think that he was compelled to talk to me and be at that place at that time. And he wasn't quite sure why he was talking, because he stated that he doesn't know why he's telling me this story. But in my head, it's being narrated to me. He's telling you this story because of what he did to you in your past life and what you did for him, and I guess his soul, in forgiving him before he killed you. Before I passed away, I forgave him. And so in his next life, since he had done this act, he was compelled to have the act done to him, like a karmic type thing. But since I had forgiven him, that he wasn't going to have to carry on this cycle. So the guy that shot him is not going to have anything happen because he didn't actually kill anybody, right? So it stopped that wheel of karma. That's how it was explained to me.
Wow. I'm not sure which order of events I'm going to release these podcasts, but I have to share something with you that is kind of crazy. The last person that I spoke to has a similar story to yours. It's not exactly the same, but it's similar. He has a story where he calls it synchronicities. Have you heard of that term before?
Well, that's what I called this episode, was a whole bunch of different synchronicities. It's like I've experienced them before in the past, but this was at such an incredible magnitude. It's like, there's no way. I mean, this is completely orchestrated by something else, and it's not me.
Oh, one part of the story I want to clarify is, I think you said in the beginning, when you bought the car, you first referenced your wife as your wife, but then you said it was your girlfriend. I'm assuming at the time it was your girlfriend. Is that correct?
Yeah, we're married now, but yeah, at that time she was my girlfriend because we weren't living in the same house at that time. The entire day was orchestrated down to the minutest detail, right down to the second. I mean, just the fact that I had to wait, and then the voice would say, "Okay, now go," and then it was actually pacing me to walk a certain speed so I would get to a certain spot at a certain time. I mean, it was I was not in control. It was something was being shown to me in a very, just like that premonition dream, but I was completely awake. I've had tons of experiences. Some of them are way more crazy than what I've described to you, but there is absolutely some type of a higher self, at least, that will orchestrate things for you. Like if there's some kind of experience that you need to have or see, or something you need to learn from, your higher self is going to make sure that you have this. It's really hard to put these into words, but like my first wife, I was so sure that I'd met her in between lives. The weird thing is that it wasn't up until around when I met her that I even started thinking about reincarnation, because it wasn't in my past. I'd heard of the word, but I didn't think that it was a real thing. I just thought it was some obscure religious belief of trying to explain something. But as I started having these experiences, it was showing me that no, this is actually real. And I started reading stories about it, whatever. But I just felt that I really wasn't supposed to be with my first wife at all, except that I had met her in between lives. Like, it seems apparent to me that when you pass on, you go up into this plane, and it's actually been described by people with near-death experiences, but you go into this plane in between the solid earth and beyond, and then you can plan out your next life. And then, you're working with your higher self and all these other things, and you plan out what you're going to do. And at some point in this state, I met my future wife, and we weren't supposed to interact with each other at all. We all had our different things, but we thought it'd be pretty funny if we could just cook up something where we could meet in this next life and then be together. And that's kind of what happened. It was just this weird thing that just started happening between us. And oh, that's you. And I knew, like, immediately after our first date that we were going to get married at some point. And we did. Within a year, we were married. And then within 5 years, like, no, this was a huge mistake. And the powers were working to get rid of that union. And they did. They were very successful. It was very traumatic for both of us. But there's a higher self, I believe. And every once in a while, it'll connect with you. And I've had some of the weirdest things, and I can't even tell if some of these things that have happened are a higher self or multiple universes that happen at the same time or what. It's just, I certainly don't have the answers, and I don't suspect I ever will. I really wish that more people could have these types of experiences. Like my brother is one. I mean, he's always saying, "Man, I wish I could have the experiences that you've had," because he's very scientific. He's a chemist, and he goes through all the scientific method, and he's always trying to prove things and figure them out. But he can't figure out the stuff that I've gone through, and he obviously can't dismiss it. And he trusts me because he has grown up with me. So he wants to know. He wants to know why he's not having the same kind of things and same type of experiences. And he craves it, but he can't. He just can't quite get there.
I have a theory on that I'll share. I think I think we're wrong about consciousness. I think that consciousness is not something that you have and that I have and that other people have. I think it's a collective consciousness that we tune into. It's almost like we have this sense that our brains are broadcasting consciousness. Like I have consciousness and you have consciousness. But I think really what it is our brain's more of a receiver of consciousness, that we tap into this spiritual consciousness and then we just have this like meat sack that we walk around Earth in. And I think some of us, I think myself, I've never experienced anything unexplainable or paranormal. I think some people like yourself, you have a sixth sense, or the veil is thinner with you in a way that allows you to experience these things. And it's a rare gift. It's like having like a like a double jointed thumb or something like that not everyone has, but some people have it, and they get to experience life in like a slightly different way, and maybe a more spiritual way, I guess you can say. And people like your brother and people like me, there's two types of those people that kind of forks off into two different categories. There's people like me that I've never experienced anything, but I'm empathetic and I want to learn more about it and I'm interested in it. And there's a sense of belief and trust that I have in experiencers like you. And then there's the trolls, the people that I've never seen a ghost, or I've never seen an alien or a UFO or experienced deja vu. So it all must be malarkey. What do you think the experience at the DMV was meant to teach you?
Well, what I got out of it was that the things that we do to each other matter, and we are all connected. Like you, I do believe that it is a collective consciousness. There is nobody that's better or worse than you are. And there's actually no anything that's better or worse than you are. It's all connected. And so when you do things like that, like, try and rob somebody or do violence, you're really just doing it to yourself. And so you have to take that view of, it's really just the golden rule. Do unto yourself as you would do unto others, right? And that's really how basic it gets. But this was just a really vivid example of that, and a way to stop the cycle, the wheel of karma, as it were. And that forgiveness is a huge part of that. It's really hard to do. Sometimes it's almost impossible, but to be able to have that forgiveness and to be able to let that go, you're not only forgiving that person, but you're forgiving yourself as well.
All right, club members, as you've just heard, Michael Clifford's story takes us on an unforgettable journey through time, karma, and the unseen forces that may connect us all. From vivid dreams to incredible synchronicities, his experiences challenge everything we think we know about life, death, and forgiveness. I also wanted to mention that Josh and I dug into historical records, trying to uncover any information about a murder in a diner or candy shop in the 1940s or 50s in the St. Louis area. Despite our efforts, we couldn't really find anything definitive. But does that make Michael's story any less compelling or any less possible? I'll let you decide. Also, for those still listening, I've been thinking, wouldn't it be fascinating to bring Christopher from episode 2, Milford Has Been Shot, and Michael together for some sort of bonus episode? Their experiences share so many profound parallels, and exploring the meaning behind them in a deeper conversation could be something truly special. If that's something you'd like to hear, let us know in the comments or reach out on social media, and if enough of you want it, we'll make it happen. If you haven't already, give us a follow on TikTok or Instagram. We're sharing a bunch of really cool content, behind the scenes, trailers, and a bunch of other stuff. There's a really awesome community starting there, so feel free to join and be a part of it. Oh, and don't forget to share this episode with friends and family and leave us a 5-star review. That kind of stuff really does go a long way. This episode has been produced and edited by Justin Gearhart and mixed and mastered by Brett Jarvis. Thanks again for being here, and you've been listening to the Close Encounter Club.